Big 30 and BEO Lil.
Big 30 and BO Lil Kenny are at war, and in Memphis, a war like this starts with a title. One rapper stood up and told the other he can't even come home. Right now, in 2026, BO Lil Kenny has publicly told Big 30 to stay out of Memphis. He banned him from his own city. And Big 30, a rapper who built his name on a song literally called Allegations and a debut tape called King of Kill Branch, a man from South Memphis who came up shoulder to shoulder with Pooh Shiesty, is on camera right now responding to a rival telling him he doesn't belong on the same streets he raps about. Let me put some real numbers on the table before we go any further, so you understand the weight of this. Big 30's real name is Rodney Lamont Wright Jr. He's 26 years old. His debut mixtape hit number 13 on the Billboard 200. He has a gold record with Allegations. He's traded features with Lil Durk, Future, Quavo, Moneybagg Yo Gotti, and Offset. And in April 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice put his government name in an official press release, charging him alongside Pooh Shiesty and 7 other men in a federal kidnapping case out of Dallas, Texas. A case where, according to Memphis reporting, the man held at gunpoint was Gucci Mane. On the other side, BO Lil Kenny is signed to Quality Control, the same label machine that built the Migos into superstars. By his own label's official bio, he was staring down 2 potential life sentences and used writing in prison as a lifeline. He stepped off the prison bus and shot a music video that same day. And he's a man that hip-hop YouTube has spent months trying to tie to the single most explosive open murder case in the city, the killing of Big Juke, the brother of Yo Gotti. Here's where it gets serious, and here's why I need you locked in for the next hour. The internet has been selling you a story that the actual record doesn't back up. The blogs have been running headlines claiming BO Lil Kenny got arrested for Big Juke's murder. That's the narrative. That's the clickbait. But as of the most recent Associated Press and Memphis Police Department statements, no one has been arrested and charged in Big Juke's killing. Not Kenny, not anybody. That case is still open. So how did we travel from an unsolved murder all the way to 2 rappers at war, with one banning the other from his own hometown? That's the whole video, and I'm going to walk you through every step of it. This story has bodies in its background. It has a record label war that turned into a murder-for-hire trial broadcast on live television. One man convicted and sentenced to life. One admitted shooter cooperating with the state. One alleged mastermind acquitted and then hit with brand new federal charges. One music executive gunned down at a repass with no one ever charged. And a federal kidnapping case swallowing 2 of Memphis's biggest names. Sitting right on top of all of it is a fresh beef between Big 30 and BO Lil Kenny that the entire city is watching. By the time we're done, you're going to understand exactly who Big 30 is, exactly who BO Lil Kenny is, exactly what the courts have actually proven versus what the streets are saying, and exactly why these 2 men are pointed at each other right now. Let's get into it. To understand why a band from Memphis even matters, you have to understand that in Memphis rap, the city itself is the prize. This isn't Atlanta, where there's room for 100 stars to shine at once. Memphis is a tighter, more territorial scene, and for the last decade it's been run by 2 gravitational forces. Yo Gotti's CMG, Collective Music Group, originally Cocaine Music Group, and the late Young Dolph's Paper Route Empire, PRE. Almost every major Memphis name from the last 10 years orbits one of those 2 sons. And the war between those 2 camps is the foundation everything in this video sits on top of. Big 30 came up inside the Bread Gang, Endless, and Moneybagg Yo ecosystem, which puts him squarely in the CMG adjacent world. Moneybagg Yo is CMG's biggest active star. Yo Gotti is CMG's founder. So when you trace Big 30's affiliations back, they point to Gotti's side of the Memphis map. That matters, because the man he's now beefing with, BO Lil Kenny, has spent his recent run dissing the very people and institutions tied to that side. Here's the contradiction that makes this whole thing combustible. Big 30 isn't just some artist with bars. He's a federal defendant right now, fighting a kidnapping case that names Gucci Mane as a victim. His best friend and childhood partner Pooh Shiesty is in the same indictment. The same Pooh Shiesty who just got home from a different federal prison stretch in late 2025. So at the exact moment Big 30 should be keeping the lowest profile of his life, a rival is publicly humiliating him, telling him he can't come home, and the whole city is watching to see what he does about it. And B.O. Lil Kenny isn't just some random op either. He's a quality control signee with a real prison story, a real catalog, and a reputation for saying the things other Memphis rappers will only whisper. He's been openly antagonizing the CMG side, and he's planted himself right in the middle of the most dangerous conversation in the city, the conversation about Young Dolph and about Big Juke. So understand, this isn't really a beef about a song. It's a beef about who gets to claim Memphis, layered on top of a record label war that already turned into multiple murders and multiple trials. The ban is just the surface. Underneath, it is the entire PRE versus CMG saga, the unsolved killing of Yo Gotti's brother, and a federal case that could put Big 30 away for years. To understand how two rappers ended up here, pointing at each other in this exact moment, we have to go back to the beginning. Let's rewind to the Memphis of the mid-2010s, because that's where the engine of this whole thing got built. Back then, the city's modern rap era was being shaped by two men who could not have been more opposed, Yo Gotti and Young Dolph. Yo Gotti is the elder statesman. He grew CMG into a real business, a powerhouse, a label prosecutors would later describe in open court by both of its names, Collective Music Group and the original Cocaine Music Group. Gotti's older brother, Anthony Mims, known on the streets and in the headlines as Big Juke, was the number 2 figure in that operation. Court testimony would later describe Big Juke as the man handling the label's business behind the scenes, the money figure, the one young artists were told to get in good with if they wanted to eat. Young Dolph went the opposite direction entirely. Dolph, whose real name was Adolph Thornton Jr., born in Chicago but raised in Memphis, built Paper Route Empire as a fiercely independent operation. And the thing that turned Dolph into a Memphis legend is this: he turned CMG down. According to the widely reported origin of the feud, Yo Gotti tried to sign Dolph around 2014, and Dolph said no. Then he built his own empire without them, and made sure everybody knew he did it on his own. That refusal, that independence, is the spark that lit the entire decade-long war. For a while, it stayed cold. But in early 2016, right after Gotti's record Down in the DM hit #1 on the Billboard chart, Dolph surfaced on social media taking shots, referencing the old rejection and calling Gotti a hater. From there, it turned hot fast. In February 2016, a van carrying Young Dolph's entourage was shot at in front of a hotel in Charlotte, North Carolina. Then came Black Youngsta, a Memphis rapper Yo Gotti had signed to CMG in 2015, the year after the failed Dolph signing. In March 2016, Youngsta posted videos threatening Dolph directly, calling him out, even attacking the fact that Dolph was born in Chicago, not Memphis. In one clip, Youngsta and a crew rolled through Castalia, the Memphis neighborhood where Dolph lived, and the message was unmistakable. Yo Gotti, for his part, publicly distanced himself, saying in an interview that he doesn't move like that, and that he tells the young ones not to handle business that way. Here's where it gets crazy. In February 2017, Dolph reignited the whole thing, naming Yo Gotti on a diss record and dropping a video with a Gotti lookalike in it. Gotti hit back with his own diss, "Don't at me." And then, in the very next stretch, Young Dolph's bulletproof SUV was shot at more than 100 times in Charlotte, North Carolina. Dolph survived because the truck was armored. Months later, the van connected to that shooting was reportedly traced to a rental in Black Youngsta's name. Youngsta got an arrest warrant, turned himself in, and maintained his innocence. Here's the part that tells you exactly how personal this was. Dolph took that 100 shots moment and made it his entire brand. He dropped an album called Bulletproof, opened it with a track literally titled 100 Shots, and named his debut album King of Memphis, a phrase Yo Gotti had used for himself. Dolph didn't just survive the war. He marketed it. He turned the assassination attempt into a flex. Then it got even more dangerous. In September 2017, Young Dolph was shot multiple times outside the Loews Hollywood Hotel in Los Angeles, hit in the arm and hospitalized in critical condition. Yo Gotti was briefly named a person of interest by LAPD before being cleared. A man named Corey McClendon, described as a longtime Gotti associate, was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and held on $1 million bond. Dolph survived again. By this point, the PRE versus CMG war was the loudest, most dangerous rivalry in Southern rap, and every artist in Memphis had to either pick a lane or stay quiet. That's the environment. Now let me introduce you to our two main characters, because they both grew up inside this exact war. Rodney Wright Jr., Big 30, was born December 28, 1999, in South Memphis, in the Kill Branch neighborhood he later named his debut tape after. His father put him on to rap music young, but the relationship that changed his life wasn't with his dad. It was with a kid named Montrell Williams Jr., who the world would come to know as Pooh Shiesty. The two were childhood friends, and around 2018, Shiesty pushed Big 30 to start rapping for real. Their earliest records, songs like RC, Chopper Talk, and Breaking News, circulated around Memphis and started pulling real YouTube numbers. The chemistry between them was immediate, and it became the engine of Big 30's entire early career. In 2019, Big 30 signed with Endless Entertainment, the label owned by former NBA star Zach Randolph, and with Moneybagg Yo's Bread Gang Entertainment. That's the moment Big 30 got institutional backing and got pulled into the CMG-adjacent orbit. His solo records started exploding. Allegations, featuring Pooh Shiesty, went gold. Shout Out the Vet pulled tens of millions of views. Then, in 2021, Pooh Shiesty's Neighbors, featuring Big 30, hit number 51 on the Billboard Hot 100. Their record with Moneybagg Yo hit number 52, and his debut mixtape, King of Kill Branch, landed at number 13 on the Billboard 200, stacked with features from Lil Durk, Future, Quavo, Moneybagg Yo, Yo Gotti, and Offset. For a kid from Kill Branch, that's the dream made real. He followed it with Last Man Standing in 2022 and Still King in 2024. But here's the part that matters most for this story. Big 30's whole foundation is built right next to Pooh Shiesty, and Pooh Shiesty's whole rise is built on Gucci Mane's 1017 label, which Atlantic Records reportedly backed with a deal worth around $10 million. Hold on to that, because Gucci Mane is going to come back around in the most explosive way imaginable. Let me stay on Pooh Shiesty for a minute, because you can't understand Big 30's 2026 without understanding his best friend's role. Shiesty blew up off Back in Blood with Lil Durk, which hit number 13 on the Hot 100, and his debut mixtape, Shy Season, peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200. He was one of the hottest new rappers in the country. Then the law caught him. Shiesty was charged in connection with an October 2020 incident at a Florida hotel. Prosecutors said he met a man to buy marijuana and sneakers, took the items without paying, and that the man, Brandon Cooper, was shot before Shiesty and his crew fled in a rented McLaren, with a bag holding more than $40,000 in cash reportedly falling out of the car as they drove off. Shiesty pleaded guilty in January 2022 to a firearms conspiracy charge, and in April 2022, a Miami federal judge sentenced him to 63 months. He was released early in October 2025 after serving roughly 3 years. The homecoming clips that hit social media showed him celebrating with Big 30 right there beside him. That's the friendship. That's how tight that unit is. Remember that, because within months of their homecoming, both of them would be staring down a brand new federal case together. Now, the other side of the map, B.O. Lil Kenny, where Big 30 had a famous best friend and a major backing machine early. Kenny's biography is built around survival in prison. By the account on his own official streaming bio, Kenny faced 2 potential life sentences and used writing as a lifeline behind the wall, crafting the sound that would define him. He cites Gucci Mane, OG Boo Dirty, and Young Scooter as his influences, and Gucci even appeared on one of his projects. The image the camp pushes is raw and literal. He stepped off the prison bus and shot a music video that same day, like he had no time to waste. Then Kenny got the cosign that changed his entire ceiling, Quality Control. That's Coach K and P. Thomas's operation, the label that built the Migos into one of the biggest rap acts on the planet. Getting QC behind you means real distribution, real money, real reach, a real platform. So now you've got a Memphis artist with a hard prison story, a major label behind him, and absolutely zero fear of saying the names other people in the city won't say out loud. That's Kenny. 2 Memphis artists, 2 opposite come-ups, both standing in the long shadow of a record label war that already produced bloodshed and attempted murders. Here's where it gets crazy. Because the thing that turns this from history into a live 2026 war is what happened to young Dolph and everything that happened after. Everything escalates from one day, November 17th, 2021. On that day, young Dolph walked into Makeda's Homemade Butter Cookies, a small bakery near his childhood neighborhood in Memphis. According to police and trial testimony, two men got out of a vehicle and fired into the shop. Dolph was shot more than 20 times. He died right there, in broad daylight, buying cookies in his own city. Memphis lost one of its biggest independent stars, and the PRE-CMG war went from records and survived shootings to a completed homicide the whole world was watching. What happened in the courtroom over the following years is the documented spine of this entire saga. So let me walk you through exactly what was proven and what wasn't, because this is where the internet's version and the actual records start to split apart. The state charged 4 men. The first to face a jury was Justin Johnson, who raps as Straight Drop. In September 2024, a Shelby County jury found Johnson guilty of first-degree murder. He was automatically sentenced to life in prison, and that November a judge stacked on decades more. 35 years for conspiracy, plus additional time for being a felon in possession of a firearm. That's conviction number 1. That's proven in court beyond a reasonable doubt. Before the verdict, Dolph's family read a statement to the courtroom, telling the man responsible that the evidence spoke clearly even if he wouldn't. The state's star witness was a man named Cornelius Smith, and Smith didn't dance around it. He admitted on the stand that he was one of the 2 shooters. Smith testified that he and Johnson carried out the hit, and he identified both of them in the surveillance video from Makeda's. Smith cooperated with prosecutors, and as of the most recent reporting in 2026, his attorney has indicated he intends to take a plea deal. His case has been reset more than once, and he has not yet been sentenced. So that's an admitted shooter, cooperating, still awaiting his own resolution. Now, here's the testimony that ties this whole thing back to CMG, and I want to be precise about the language, because precision is the difference between journalism and a lawsuit. Prosecutors told a jury, and Cornelius Smith testified, that the hit on young Dolph was ordered by Anthony Big Juke Mims, Yo Gotti's brother, who Smith said put out a $100,000 bounty on Dolph, plus smaller bounties on the rest of the PRE roster. The deputy district attorney laid out the theory in opening statements. CMG wanted Dolph to sign. Dolph refused. Dolph made diss tracks aimed at Big Juke and the label, and the state argued Big Juke wanted revenge. That is the prosecution's stated theory and the sworn testimony of a cooperating co-defendant. Understand the distinction, because it's everything. Big Juke was never charged, never convicted, never tried, and never got to answer those claims in a courtroom. A sergeant testified that investigators tried to talk to Big Juke at the airport, and he declined, and that police were still building their case on him when he was killed. The investigation got granular. An MPD investigator testified that minutes after the shooting, Justin Johnson's call history showed him calling Big Juke, then FaceTiming him. A digital investigator, Sergeant Jesse Browning, used specialized software to map a flurry of calls and texts between the suspects in the hours and days around the murder. Phone records were introduced showing dozens of communications between Johnson, Smith, Govan, and Big Juke. There was a 4th defendant in the mix early, Jermarcus Johnson, Justin's half-brother, who pleaded guilty in October 2023 to 3 counts of accessory after the fact. He testified he'd helped Justin by taking his phone and posting to social media for him, while insisting he had no part in the actual plan to kill Dolph. Then came the 4th charged man, the one prosecutors called the organizer, Hernandez Govan. The state's theory was that Govan was the middleman, the guy who paired the 2 shooters, supplied the guns, tipped them off that Dolph would be in Memphis for a Thanksgiving turkey giveaway, and expected a $10,000 cut. Smith testified that Govan recruited him and Johnson and told him about the bounties. Govan had been out on a $90,000 bond awaiting trial, and his trial finally came in August 2025. And here's the plot twist a lot of people forget when they tell this story. The jury acquitted Govan after roughly 3 hours of deliberation. He was found not guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy. He had reportedly rejected a plea offer from the state the month before, and he gambled and won. His defense attorney, Manny Aurora, tore into Cornelius Smith's credibility, calling him an unreliable witness who'd say anything for a lighter sentence, and pointing out inconsistencies in Smith's various accounts. Govind didn't testify in his own defense. When the verdict came, he hugged his lawyer, thanked the judge, and walked out a free man, telling reporters he always knew in his heart he was innocent. The district attorney's office said they still intend to hold everyone responsible accountable, but the man the state called the mastermind beat the case entirely. So let's total up the actual ledger on young Dolph. One man convicted and serving life plus decades, Justin Johnson. One admitted shooter cooperating and awaiting a plea, Cornelius Smith. One half-brother who pleaded to accessory charges, Jamarcus Johnson. One alleged organizer, tried and acquitted, Hernandez Govind. And the man prosecutors named as the person who ordered it, Big Juke, never charged, because by the time the trials rolled around, Big Juke himself was dead. Which brings us to the murder the whole internet is obsessed with, and the one this video keeps circling back to, the killing of Big Juke. On January 13th, 2024, Anthony Big Juke Mims, 47, was shot and killed outside an event center on Winchester Road in the Hickory Hill area of Memphis. According to police, an officer nearby heard the gunshots around 4:15 in the afternoon, drove toward the sound, and found two victims with multiple gunshot wounds. Big Juke died at the hospital. The second man survived. Police said the two had been attending a repast, the meal shared by family and friends after a funeral service. Investigators believe Big Juke was the intended target. The one public lead Memphis police put out was an image of a vehicle leaving the scene. A white Ford Explorer with no license plate, black wheels, and dark tinted windows. Now stay with me, because this is the single most important fact in the entire video, the one that separates what's real from what's clickbait. As of the most recent Memphis Police and Associated Press reporting in 2026, more than 18 months after Big Juke was killed, no one has been arrested and charged in his murder. MPD has publicly called it an ongoing investigation with no suspects they can name. The Associated Press, as recently as May 2026, stated flatly that no arrests have been made in Big Juke's death. Memphis police were still asking anyone with information to call Crime Stoppers. So when you see those headlines, B.O. Lil Kenny arrested for Big Juke's murder, understand exactly what you're looking at. Those headlines are coming from hip-hop YouTube channels and social media reaction pages, not from Memphis police, not from the Shelby County District Attorney, not from the Associated Press. Kenny was reportedly arrested at one point after a police chase, and the hip-hop internet immediately stitched that arrest to Big Juke's open murder case because it made a better story and a better thumbnail. But the documented record does not support the claim that B.O. Lil Kenny has been charged with killing Big Juke. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Kenny did something the police themselves haven't charged him with. That's not me protecting anybody. That's me refusing to put a murder on a living man's name that the actual case file doesn't put there. Get that part right, because everybody else is getting it wrong on purpose. So why is Kenny even in this conversation then? Because Kenny put himself in it. After young Dolph's death, B.O. Lil Kenny stepped directly into the most dangerous lane in Memphis rap, making music and statements that antagonized the CMG side, statements fans read as rubbing salt in a wound the city already carried. Fresh out of prison, freshly signed to quality control, Kenny became, in the eyes of a lot of the city, the loudest, boldest voice on his side of the war. And the more attention he pulled, the more the internet wanted to cast him as the answer to the open question of who got Big Juke. That's speculation doing exactly what speculation does, filling a vacuum the police haven't filled yet. It was in that exact environment, Kenny rising as the city's most provocative antagonist, the CMG side wounded and relatively quiet, the Dolph trials playing out on live TV, that Kenny turned his attention toward a specific target tied to the CMG-adjacent world, Big 30. Here's where it really went down, and here's why I have to be straight with you about what this beef actually is, because the documented truth is more interesting than the fantasy version the comment sections are selling. The Big 30 versus B.O. Lil Kenny war, as it exists on the record, is a war of words, records, and public moves, and it's been escalating in plain sight for months. This isn't me telling you about secret bodies in the dark. This is the documented, on-camera, posted for the world to see version, and it's wild enough on its own without anybody inventing anything. It started ramping up when B.O. Lil Kenny aimed at the Pooh Shiesty camp directly. Remember, Shiesty is Big 30's childhood best friend and the cornerstone of his entire career, the man who pushed him to start rapping, the man whose homecoming from federal prison Big 30 celebrated on camera in late 2025. They're a unit. They've been a unit since they were kids in Memphis. So in this city, coming for Pooh Shiesty is coming for Big 30. There's no separating the two. Then it got more personal. Reaction channels and Memphis rap pages reported that Kenny dropped a record taking aim at a name fans connected to a deceased relative of Big 30's. That's the line that turns a rap beef into something else entirely. In street rap culture, invoking somebody's actual deceased family member on a record is about the most disrespectful move there is. It's the kind of disrespect a man can't just scroll past. If that diss was reported accurately, then Kenny didn't just enter a beef. He aimed at the most painful possible target on purpose. And then came the headline that names this whole video. B.O. Lil Kenny publicly told Big 30 he's bad for Memphis. He told him to stay away from the city. Think about the audacity of that. Memphis is the city Big 30 has tattooed across his entire brand. Kill Branch, South Memphis, King of Kill Branch. For a rival to stand up and announce, on the internet, in front of the whole world, that you can't come home in your own town, that's not a bar buried in a song. That's a public claim to territory. That's Kenny saying out loud that the streets Big 30 raps about don't belong to Big 30 anymore. In a city this territorial, that's about as loud a statement as you can make without picking up anything but a phone. Big 30 responded, and that's the part that's been getting clipped across YouTube and TikTok for the past week. He went on camera and fired back, refusing to accept the premise that anybody alive could ban him from his own city. Reaction channels described it as Big 30 firing back, the situation getting ugly. A TikTok breakdown framed it around the Memphis rap politics behind the ban. What you're watching in real time is two Memphis artists publicly negotiating who gets to claim the city, one with a major label behind him and a prison story, the other with a famous best friend, a federal case, and a full decade in the Memphis machine. Now, I want to be responsible with you here, because this is the exact point where a lot of channels drive right off a cliff. There's a swirl of online speculation, forum posts, comment sections, anonymous accounts claiming all kinds of things about shootings, cars getting hit, who's supposedly active against who. I'm not going to read you anonymous forum posts as if they're facts and put real violence on real people's names based on a comment section. People in those threads are openly hyping up the idea of a bloody summer in Memphis, and the last thing this channel is going to do is launder that energy into a narrative and call it news.